brightness. Yes! Oh, look. Yeah, that's good lighting. Good light. We're so yellow. Wait. I don't want to turn the light up too much because I'm so incredibly yellow. The camera is going to burst into flames because I'm like a daffodil. I am a daffodil. Yes. Hi, it's Alison Arngrim, and I'm in my living room again, still. Yes, I got up the yellow... Look at this bonnet. Is this the yellowest, most gorgeous yellow bonnet you ever saw in your entire life? So I decided to go blazing yellow today. So I'm at pink nails. Ooh. So I'm so yellow. My hair is super yellow, and my bonnet is super yellow, and it's a soup, because it's Monday. Monday is always like, it's Monday. But I thought, well, here, I've been blazing, this will wake everybody up. Hello from Switzerland. Hi, Switzerland, and there's Barbara, and there's Martha. It's romper room. Hi, Barbara. Hi, everybody. It's awesome. So, yes, I think I'm bright enough. We're doing the thing, Banks of Plum Creek. Now, some of you may have noticed that Sarah had her blog thing, her little talk show, her podcast thing. It's great. Her little prairie thing. And I did that show. I did that at 11. It's up on Facebook, and it's really cool. And we talked about cows. We talked about everything. And it was awesome because we actually talked about grasshopper weather came up and that is, in fact, the chapter we're reading today. So I'm very excited. I did get bonnets, as you can see. I have more bonnets coming. Currently, we're sold out. I may put a couple more up, like 5 tonight, just because I know more are in the mail. But I have baskets of packages ready to go to the post office this afternoon or tomorrow morning. Said, woo! Books and bonnets will be going out in the mail. So we're very, 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 very happy about that. I did the candles. There's a couple candle orders that's going out. Yeah, we're making it happen. I have a tin cup of milk because it tastes better in a tin cup. As you said, when I want to buy it. Any day. I'll put on that there's a few left tonight, and then there's more coming in the mail. So in a few days, I'll bought it for days. I have a snack. What do I have? Goldfish. More yellow. Goldfish crackers. They're a little salty, but other than that, they're almost good for you. I'll tell you here. I didn't mean to buy this many goldfish. We had a coupon, and I went, we'll get a little pack of goldfish. No, it's for this size. A lifetime supply of goldfish crackers. All right. That was good. Hello. Happy Monday. On the Banks Plum Creek. Yep. Grasshopper weather. Just talking about this, Sarah. Grasshopper weather. Now, plums were ripening in the wild plum thickets all along Plum Creek. Plum trees were low trees. They grew close together with many little scraggly branches, all strung with thin-skinned, juicy plums. Yes, this is true. Around them, the air was sweet and sleepy, and wings hummed. I'm reading your comments. I'm terrible. I'm tempted to stop and read the comments. I love coupons. You know what I get? I play the Monopoly thing at the supermarket to give you the Monopoly things. We're playing Monopoly. I'm going to win. I'm deadly going to win. Wings hum, dragonflies. Pa was plowing all the land across the creek where he had cut the hay. Early before the sun came up, when Laura went to drive Spot to meet the cattle at the Grey Boulder, Pete and Bright were gone from the stable. Pa had yoked them to the plow and gone to work. That's why he traded them horses for those oxen. When Laura and Mary had washed the breakfast dishes, they took tin pails and went to pick plums. From the top of their house, they could see Pa plowing. The oxen and the plow and Pa crawled slowly along a curve of the prairie. They looked very small, and a little smoke of dust blew away from the plow. Every day, the velvety brown dark patch of plowed land grew bigger. It ate up the silvery gold stubble field beyond the haystacks. It spread over the prairie waves. It was going to be a very big wheat field, and when someday Pa cut that wheat, he and Ma and Laura and Mary would have everything they could think of. Because, I think wheat sold at a pretty good price then, and if you had a lot of it, people needed wheat. People need wheat now. You can't get flour at the supermarkets. Wheat is always in. They would have a house and horses and candy every day when Pa made a wheat crop. Yeah, I bet Pa didn't say that. I think Laura came up with the candy every day thing. Laura went wading through the tall grasses to the plum thickets by the creek. Her sunbonnet hung down her back, and she swung her tin pail. The grasses were crisping yellow now. It's a yellow day. And dozens of little grasshoppers jumped, crackling away from Laura's swishing feet. Mary came walking behind in the path Laura made, and she kept her sunbonnet on. Goody goody. When they came to a plum thicket, they set down their big pails. They filled their little pails with plums and emptied them into the big pails till they were full. Then they carried the big pails back to the roof of the dugout. On the clean grass, Ma spread clean cloths, and Laura and Mary laid the plums on the cloths to dry in the sun. Next winter, they would have dried plums to eat. Well, what they're making is prunes. They dry plum to prunes. Did you know that in France, they call plums that are still plums, not prunes, they call them prunes? You have prunes, and then you have dried prunes. We only call the dried ones prunes. But prunes, and they're making prunes. And notice they're on the roof. Apparently for an ox, you will fall through the roof, but if you're just like drying plums, a person can walk up there. The shade of the plum thickets was a thin shade. Sunshine flickered between the narrow leaves overhead. The little branches sagged with their weight of plums, and plums had fallen and rolled together between drifts of long grass underfoot. Yum. Some were smashed, some were smooth and perfect, and some had cracked open, showing the juicy yellow inside. Bees and hornets stood thick along the cracks, sucking up the juices with all their might. Their scaly tails wiggled with joy. They were too busy and too happy to sting. When Laura poked them with a blade of grass, they only moved a step and did not stop sucking up the good plum juice. Yeah, that is a problem. When you have plums and they fall off, you do get bugs, and you can get like yellow jackets and things that sting you. But they're too busy eating plums. Laura put all the good plums in her pail. But she flicked the hornets off the cracked plums with her fingernail and quickly popped the plum into her mouth. She has to be careful that she doesn't eat a bee. It was sweet and warm and juicy. The hornets buzzed around her in dismay. They did not know what had become of their plum. But in a minute, they pushed into the crowd, sucking at another one. Okay, she is so lucky that they just do not sting her for, like, stealing her plums. Terrible. I declare you eat more plums than you pick up, Mary said. I don't either any such a thing, Laura contradicted. I pick up every plum I eat. You know very well what I mean, Mary said crossly. You just play around while I work. But Laura filled her big pail as quickly as Mary filled hers. Mary was cross because she would rather sew or read than pick plums. But Laura hated to sit still. She liked picking plums. She liked to shake the trees. You must know exactly how to shake a plum tree. If you shake it too hard, the green plums fall, and that wastes them. If you shake it too softly, you do not get all the ripe plums. In the night they will fall, and some will smash and be wasted. This is very sound, useful advice if you have a plum tree. I have a plum tree in the yard. It's not been doing so well. It's springing some nice little green branches now. Maybe we're going to get plums this summer. It's kind of iffy. It's a very iffy little plum tree. But when it did, it was awesome. Laura learned exactly how to shake a plum tree. She held its scaling rough bowl and shook it. One quick, gentle shake. Every plum swung on its stem, and all around her they fell pattering. Then one more jerk while the plums were swinging, and the last ripe ones fell. Blum, 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 blum. Okay, we had animal impressions. Now we're doing tree impressions. Blum, blum. There were many kinds of plums. When the red ones were all picked, the yellow ones were ripe. Then the blue ones. The largest of all were the very last. They were the frost plums that would not ripen till after frost. Oh, I think I like the blue ones, the big dark ones. Those are the ones I like. The red ones are dark ones. One morning, the whole world was delicately silvered. Ooh, every blade of grass was silvery, and the path had a thin sheen. It was hot like fire under Laura's bare feet, and they left dark footprints in it. The air was cold in her nose, and her breath steamed. So did Spots. When the sun came up, the whole prairie sparkled. Millions of tiny, tiny sparks of color blazed on the grasses. That day, the frost plums were ripe. Frost, but not like a big, heavy, like snowy frost, just like sparkly dew, enough to make the frost plums go ripe. They were large purple plums, and all over their purple was a silvery thin sheen like frost. Oh, those plums. Those are the ones we get mostly in California in the supermarkets. The big, fat, purpley ones with the silvery sheen. Those are the big sweet ones. I like those. I've had the little yellow ones are tasty, but the big. The sun was not so hot now, and the nights were chilly. The prairie was almost the tawny color of the haystacks. The smell of the air was different, and the sky was not so sharply blue. So I was like, fall. We're getting a little bit, we're kind of end of summer, kind of going into fall. Wheat harvest, yay, sounds good. Still, the sunshine was warm at noon. There was no rain and no more frost. It was almost Thanksgiving time, and there was no more snow. Have you noticed that Laura does not say actually what month it is? Very rarely. Almost never does she say, it was February. No. She says it was winter, it was spring, it was fall, it was summer. She will say, it was really, really hot, and the grass was yellow, and you go, oh, it's August, like September, because it's hot. Or she'll say, the new buds were out, and it was just getting warm, and you go, oh, it's April, May. Or then she'll say, well, the frost was starting, and Thanksgiving was coming, and you're like, oh, thank you, November. And she'll give you these hints where you go, okay, that sounds like October, the leaves are turning, or oh, it's starting to get warm, so May, maybe it's June, it's still rainy. She does not say what month it is. She makes you figure it out by the seasons. Oh, it's so clever. So it's going into November. Thanksgiving is coming. It's still warm. Well, there was no rain and no more frost. It was almost Thanksgiving time, and there was no snow. I don't know what to make of it, Pa said. I never saw weather like this. Nelson says the old-timers call it grasshopper weather. Now, Pa doesn't really get this, and nobody says anything here. He says grasshopper weather, and whatever do they mean by that? Ma asked him. Pa shook his head. Can't prove it by me. Grasshopper weather, what was Nelson said. I couldn't make out what he meant by it. Likely, it's some old Norwegian saying, Ma said. And this is when the music would go, dun 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 dun. It's grasshopper weather. There's going to be a plague of locusts. It's grasshopper weather. That when the weather does, it means the grasshoppers are going to return and eat all your crops and kill everything. And it's horrible. And you're not going to have a wheat crop. And oh my God. So Pa, as nice as he is, and he may play the fiddle and be very sweet and laugh and love Ma and the kids, but this guy is not too bright when it comes to the farming. I'm sorry. Clearly he hadn't been to Minnesota. He's not up on the seasons. He's not really a great farmer because he buys the land. And wait a minute, Mr. Hansen. Yeah. Mr. Hansen is leaving in a hurry. And he does not get it. He said, I don't know why he sold his farm for such a low price. And look, he's already planted a wheat crop. Why is he leaving? And he just took the horses and said, going west. And he couldn't get out of there fast enough. Yeah. Okay, clue. Why would he do that and leave a wheat crop? And Pa goes, why is the wheat so thin? I don't know why he And then, in town, they flat out tell him, it's grasshopper weather. Oh, must be some Norwegian saying. Pa. Laura liked the sound of the words, and when she ran through the crackling prairie grasses and saw the grasshoppers jumping, she sang to herself, grasshopper weather, plague of locusts, la 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 la. Now, it's grasshopper weather because the smart farmers, like Mr. Hansen and Mr. Nelson, know that the grasshoppers are is it 7 years? Supposed to be like every 7 years, but they come, they destroy everything, and then they lay their eggs, and then they go in for years. You do not have grasshoppers, and it does have to do with the weather cycles, and it has to get so cold and then so warm, and whatever it is that grasshoppers like. But you can tell, if you know these things, grasshopper weather, and then that means it's time for the grasshoppers to hatch and to return, and when they return, they will eat all your crops and destroy everything, which is why Mr. Hanson said, "Oh no, it's a grasshopper plague this fall. No point in staying here. Let's leave. We will sell the farm to this adorable man and his lovely wife and children who clearly haven't a clue about wheat or grasshoppers." Oopsies! And there's Nelson going, yeah, it's grasshopper weather. And Charles is like, "It's a Norwegian expression." It's very sad. Pa does not know. One starts to question the Ingalls farming aptitude. I'm not sure about this. Grasshoppers. Cattle in the hay, again. We had cattle in the roof. We had cattle fall through the roof. We had Laura in the hay. Now it's cattle in the hay. Summer was gone. Winter was coming. And now it was time for Pa to make a trip to town. Here in Minnesota, town was so near that Pa would be gone only one day, and Ma was going with him. Well, as we know on the show, town was so close, they could go into town and sell some eggs and, be back for lunch. They didn't, go all day. They walked to school, they drove into town and went to the mercantile, bought some stuff, and came home for dinner. So, that's not that far. These are so good. Crunchy. Oh. And in the comments, I see someone said, "Grasshopper? Rodimus Para." Indeed. Rodimus Para, I love saying that, Rodimus Para played John Jr. on Little House on the Prairie. Mr. Edwards, when Patricia Neal comes and she has the 3 kids and she's dying, and then Mr. Edwards adopts the children, the taller John Jr. And when he was a little boy, he was on the series Kung Fu, and he played Little Grasshopper. So yes, we have grasshopper weather. It must be time for Rodimus to call. Rodimus, indeed, he played Grasshopper, which is, snatch the pebble from my hand. Grasshopper, that's him. So he's that guy. He's in France. He'll be reading. We're going to make him read a chapter. We'll totally make him read a chapter. So Ma's going to town with Pa. She took Carrie because Carrie was too little to be left far from Ma. But Mary and Laura were big girls. Mary was going on 9, and Laura was going on 8. She's still 7? Shouldn't she be 9 by now? She's still 7. And they could stay at home and take care of everything while Pa and Ma were gone. And they left them alone back in Kansas, too. For going to town, Ma made a new dress for Carrie from the pink calico that Laura had worn when she was little. She's 7. What was when she was little? She's still tiny. There was enough of it to make Carrie a little pink sunbonnet. Carrie's hair had been in curl papers all night. It hung in long golden round curls, and when Ma tied the pink sunbonnet strings under Carrie's chin, Carrie looked like a rose. So Carrie was blonde. Carrie's not blonde on the show. Carrie has brown hair. Carrie's blonde in the books, and she had curly hair. Take a little baby Nellie Oleson. Ma wore her hoop skirts and her best dress, the beautiful chalice with the little strawberries on it that she had worn to the sugaring dance at Grandma's long ago in the big woods. Oh, remember that. Now, did you notice on the TV show, nobody wore hoop skirts because that was old school. But they're going earlier here when Laura's still 7 and a little baby, and she's still doing the hoop skirt thing. Now, on the show, Laura's almost 10, and it is past hoop skirt era and more and long ago. So, and of course, in the show, Johnny Johnson has a big part and can speak English, and there you go. But she's wearing hoops. Now, be good girls, Laura and Mary, was the last thing she said. She was on the wagon seat with Carrie beside her. The lunch was in the wagon. Pa took up the ox goad. The ox goad. The thing you're going to go smack the ox with to make them go. Poor things. "We'll be back before sundown," he promised. "Hi-yoop," he said to Pete and Bright. The big ox and the little one leaned into their yoke, and the wagon started. But see, there you go, back before sundown. They can go into town. It's just a day trip. And, in fact, in the show, it wasn't even that far. "Goodbye, Pa. Goodbye, Ma. Goodbye, Carrie. Goodbye," Laura and Mary called after it. And if you go to Minnesota, the real Walnut Grove, you can go to Plum Creek, which is gorgeous, and then there's a little town, and no, that's not all day either. It's really, really close. Slowly the wagon went away. Pa walked beside the oxen, Ma and Carrie in the wagon, and Pa all grew smaller till they were gone into the prairie. The prairie seemed big and empty then, but there was nothing to be afraid of. There were no wolves and no Indians. Besides, Jack stayed close to Laura. Jack was a responsible dog. He was. He knew that he must take care of everything when Pa was away. That morning, Mary and Laura played by the creek among the rushes. They did not go near the swimming hole. They did not touch the straw stack. At noon, they ate the corn dodgers and molasses and drank the milk that Ma had left for them. Ooh, corn dodgers and molasses. I'm going to have to make that. Corn dodgers and molasses. They washed their tin cups and put them away. Then Laura wanted to play on the big rock, but Mary wanted to stay in the dugout. She said that Laura must stay there too. Ma can make me, Laura said, but you can't. Very bad. I can so, said Mary. When Ma's not here, you have to do what I say because I'm older. You have to let me have my way because I'm littler, said Laura. When did she become such a little smart butt here? That's Carrie. It isn't you, Mary told her. If you don't do what I say, I'll tell Ma. I guess I can play where I want to, said Laura. Laura, chill. Mary grabbed at her, but Laura was too quick. She darted out, and she would have run up the path, but Jack was in the way. He stood stiff, looking across the creek. Laura looked too, and she screeched, Mary! The cattle were all around Pa's haystacks. They were eating the hay. They were tearing into the stacks with their horns, gouging out hay, eating it and trampling over it. Oh, no. It's just terrible. Oh, someone saw the grasshoppers. Yes, in the weather, That's right, they can stay for years, but the weather changes and up they come. So they're trampling it. This is terrible. There would be nothing left to feed Pete and Bright and Spot in the wintertime, right? Because they have 2 ox and a cow, and that's their hay. Jack knew what to do. He ran growling down the steps to the footbridge. Pa was not there to save the haystacks. They must drive the cattle away. Oh, we can't, Mary said, scared. But Laura ran behind Jack, and Mary came after her. They went over the creek and past the spring. They came up on the prairie, and now they saw the fierce big cattle quite near. The long horns were gouging, the thick legs trampling and jostling, the wide mouths bawling. Mrrr! Mary was too scared to move. Laura was too scared to stand still. She jerked Mary along. She saw a stick and grabbed it up and ran, yelling at the cattle. Jack ran at them, growling. A big red cow swiped at him with her horn, but he jumped behind her. She snorted and galloped. All the other cattle ran humping and jostling after her, and Jack and Laura and Mary ran after them. She's done this before. Laura is not afraid to drive cattle. It's just like, wow. But they could not chase those cattle away from the haystacks. The cattle ran around and around in between the stacks, jostling and bawling, tearing off hay and trampling it. No! More and more hay slid off the stacks. Laura ran panting and yelling, waving her stick. God. The faster she ran, the faster the cattle went. Black and brown and red, brindle and spotted. Cattle big, with awful horns, and they would not stop wasting the hay. Some tried to climb over the toppling stacks. Laura was hot and dizzy. Her hair unbraided and blew into her eyes. Her throat was rough from yelling, but she kept on yelling and running and waving her stick. She was too scared to hit one of those big horn cows. More and more hay kept coming down, and faster they trampled over it. Suddenly, Laura turned around and ran the other way. She faced the big red cow coming around a haystack. The huge legs and shoulders and terrible horns were coming fast. Laura could not scream now. Yikes. But she jumped at that cow and waved her stick. The cow tried to stop, but all the other cattle were coming behind her and she couldn't. She swerved and ran away across the plowed ground, and all the others galloping after her. Jack and Laura and Mary chased them farther and farther away from the hay. Far into the high prairie grasses they chased those cattle. Okay, she almost had like a 30 cattle pile up. They almost like crashed into each other, right? Man, oh man. So then finally, Johnny Johnson rose up to the prairie, rubbing his eyes. He had been lying asleep in a warm hollow of grass. What is it, little boy blue, come blow your horn. Sheep's in the meadow, cows in the corn. Where is the boy who looks after the hay? asleep in a haystack. That's that little boy Blue down in the haystack. So little boy Blue asleep in this hay. There you go. When he's supposed to be taking care of the cattle. It's Johnny Johnson. Totally a thing. So there he is, sound asleep. Tis, tis, tis. Johnny! Johnny, Laura screamed. Wake up and watch the cattle. You'd better, Mary told him. Johnny Johnson looked at the cattle grazing in the deep grass, and he looked at Laura and Mary and Jack. He did not know what had happened, and they could not tell him because the only words he knew were Norwegian. They went back through the high grass that dragged at their trembling legs. They were glad to drink at the spring. They were glad to be in the quiet dugout and sit down to rest. Man, that was crazy. She almost got trampled. They're very. Have you seen? I mean, some of you, okay, Sarah, people live on farms. Many of you are quite familiar with cows and oxen and things. For city folk, do you know how big those things are? I mean, I am a city person, but I've definitely been to farms, and when I have, and I see cows or oxen, I'm like, whoa! I am amazed at the enormous. They are like trucks. They're like enormous, giant trucks. They are absolutely huge, and if they trample you, you're not coming back from that. It's really a problem. So I don't know. She said she's seven, and she's taking on these enormous, deadly oxen and cows. Man, under a haystack, fast asleep. These are so good. And so, if she still had Bunny, she could have rounded them up. Well, that was awesome. And there's more. What do we have? We have Runaway. Yes, we have more cows run away. Oh, and then it's going to be Christmas again. We love that it's suddenly Christmas. You know what? I'm going to read Runaway because it's more cows, and then we'll go into Christmas tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Christmas. Yeah, it's good. It's good. We need a little Christmas. All right. Chapter 11. You're getting a 3 for today. Chapter 11, Runaway. All that long, quiet afternoon, they stayed in the dugout. I'll bet. The cattle did not come back to the haystacks. Slowly, the sun went down the western sky. Soon, it would be time to meet the cattle at the big gray rock, and Laura and Mary wished that Pa and Ma would come home. Yeah, I guess. Again and again, they went up the path to look for the wagon. At last, they sat waiting with Jack on the grassy top of their house. The lower the sun went, the more attentive Jack's ears were. Often he and Laura stood up to look at the edge of the sky, where the wagon had gone, though they could see it just as well when they were sitting down. Finally, Jack turned one ear that way and then the other. Then he looked up at Laura, and a waggle went from his neck to his stubby tail. The wagon was coming! They all stood and watched till it came out of the prairie. When Laura saw the oxen and Ma and Carrie in the wagon seat, she jumped up and down, swinging her sunbonnet, shouting, "They're coming! They're coming!" "They're coming awful fast," Mary said. Uh-oh. Laura was still. She heard the wagon rattling loudly. Pete and Bright were coming very fast. They were running. They were running away. The wagon came bumpity-banging and bouncing. Laura saw Ma down in a corner of the wagon box, hanging onto it and hugging Carrie. Pa came bounding in long jumps beside Bright, shouting and hitting at Bright with the goad. He was trying to turn Bright back from the creek bank. He could not do it. It's a runaway wagon. Do you know how dangerous that is? Okay, I'm going to show pictures. And so you can see they're on the thing. They're make sure you see. They are on. There's the runaway wagon. There's the girls' nest. It is out of control. It is out of control. Pa's not, he's running, trying to catch them. And Ma and the baby Carrie, is in the wagon. And that thing flips over. Have you ever had a wagon flip over on you? Doing Little House, sometimes things went crazy when you're dealing with horses and animals. And there was a buggy. It was a buggy. And Catherine McGregor, it was Mrs. Oleson, Nellie, and Willie. We were all in our little buggy. And Jonathan Gilbert, me, Catherine McGregor. I don't know what happened. I don't know. One of the horses didn't feel like working that day, decided to go the other direction from the other horse. They hit a bump. There was a log. They didn't like it. One of them turned left and one of them turned right. Something happened. They got stung by a bee. They tripped. I don't know what the horses did, but they went, and The whole thing just went and fell over. But it was like slow-mo. We like realized, we went, oh no, and jumped. And I don't know how the heck Catherine got out, but she didn't get hurt. But the whole thing went over, and Jonathan and I, being young and we shot out of that thing. We jumped. I jumped out of a out of control falling buggy. I did a good job because I like landed on my feet and didn't die. And Catherine managed to get out without killing herself. But it was really scary. And the guys, the wranglers, they got hold of the horses and made them behave. But they did say that we were really smart to jump, and that could have ended very badly. So out of control wagons, bad. So here Pa is desperately trying to get them to stop. And he's trying to stop them from the creek bank, but he can't. The big oxen galloped nearer and nearer the steep edge. Bright was pushing Pa off it. They were all going over. The wagon, Ma, and Carrie were going to fall down the bank all the way down to the creek. Like off a cliff. They're going off the road into a ravine here. Pa shouted a terrible shout. He struck Bright's head with all his might, and Bright swerved. Laura ran screaming. Jack jumped at Bright's nose. Then the wagon, Ma and Carrie, flashed by. Bright crashed against the stable, and suddenly everything was still. Pa ran after the wagon, and Laura ran behind him. Whoa, Bright! Whoa, Pete! Pa said. He held onto the wagon box and looked at Ma. We're all right, Charles, Ma said. Her face was gray, and she was shaking all over. As we know, Ma would have said she was all right, even if they weren't, because remember, he dropped a log on her foot. She was like, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. My foot's broken. So, yeah, but she would have said, we're fine. But, yeah, they're alive. But she's kind of scared. Pete was trying to go on through the doorway into the stable, but he was yoked to Bright, and Bright was headed against the stable wall. Pa lifted Ma and Carrie out of the wagon, and Ma said, Don't cry, Carrie. See, we're all right. Carrie's pink dress was torn down the front. She snuffled against Ma's neck and tried to stop crying as Ma told her. Oh, Caroline, I thought you were going over the bank, Pa said. I thought so too for a minute, Ma answered. But I might have known you wouldn't let that happen. Pshaw, said Pa. P-S-H-A-W. Pshaw, pshaw, said Pa. It was good old Pete. He wasn't running away. Bright was, but Pete was only going along. He saw the stable and wanted his supper. But Laura knew that Ma and Carrie would have fallen down into the creek with the wagon and oxen if Pa had not run so fast and hit Bright so hard. She crowded against Ma's hoop skirts and hugged her tight and said, Oh, Ma, oh, Ma. So did Mary. There, said Ma. All's well that ends well. I think they've now said that 800 times, and I'm only on book 4. Pa says it like every 5 minutes, so all's well that ends well. Clearly, because terrible things keep happening. So anytime they survive, they say, well, all's well that ends well. Now girls help bring in the packages while Pa puts up the oxen. Like, come get the groceries out of the car. They carried all the little packages into the dugout. They met the cattle at the Grey Rock and put Spot into the stable, and Laura helped milk her while Mary helped Ma get supper. At supper, they told how the cattle had gotten to the haystacks and how they had driven them away. Pa said they had done exactly the right thing. He said, We knew we could depend on you to take care of everything, didn't we, Caroline? They had completely forgotten that Pa always brought them presents from town until after supper. He pushed back his bench and looked at them as if he expected something. Then Laura jumped on his knee and Mary sat on the other, and Laura bounced and asked, What did you bring us, Pa? What? Guess, Pa said. They could not guess, but Laura felt something crackle in his jumper pocket, and she pounced on it. She pulled out a paper bag, beautifully striped with tiny red and green stripes, and in the bag were 2 sticks of candy, one for Mary and one for Laura. They were maple sugar colored, and they were flat on one side. Mary licked hers, but Laura bit her stick, and the outside of it came off, crumbly. The inside was hard and clear and dark brown, and had a rich, brown, tangy taste. Pa said it was horehound candy. Ooh, that stuff. It's like you got your maple, and you got your licorice, and then you got horehound candy. It tastes really weird. Some people do not like horehound candy. That's why you don't see in our century in 2020 a lot of horehound candy in the store. It's an acquired taste. It tastes really, to me, somewhere between maple candy and licorice candy. It's like kind of a little spicy. And some people do not like horehound. I like it. I like it. And you know it's really good are horehound lozenges if you have a cold. Horehound lozenges are awesome. But it's a strong taste. It's a very strong taste, and you should try it. All the prairie stores, if you go to Walnut Grove online, you go to walnutgrove.org, you go to DeSmet, you go to the one in Mansfield, Missouri, the Laura's house there, you go to any of the Little House in the Prairie websites, the stores, they all got horehound candy. Try it. You should try it. You might go, bleh, what am I eating? Because it's very strong, but I like it. It's yummy. If you like licorice, you'll go mad for it. There you go. Horehound candy. After the dishes were done, Laura and Mary each took her stick of candy, and they sat on Pa's knees outside the door in the cool dusk. Ma sat just inside the dugout, humming to Carrie in her arms. The creek was talking to itself under the yellow willows. One by one, the great stars swung low and seemed to quiver and flicker in the little wind. Laura was snug in Pa's arm. His beard softly tickled her cheek, and the delicious candy taste melted on her tongue. After a while, she said, Pa, what little half-pint? Pa's voice asked against her hair. I think I like wolves better than cattle, she said. Cattle are more useful, Laura, Pa said. She thought about that a while. Then she said, anyway, I like wolves better. She was not contradicting. She was only saying what she thought. Oh, that's very Laura. I'm not contradicting. I'm just saying what I thought. Yeah, she does that a lot. Well, Laura, we're going to have a good team of horses before long, Pa said. She knew when that would be. It would be when they had a wheat crop. So there you are. You got 3 today because it was all about, the cattle. We had to settle that cattle business. Now, tomorrow, chapter 12, is the Christmas horses. And more about this grasshopper weather, where more of this, whatever could that possibly mean? And then we start talking about Christmas. And then we have, chapter 13 is A Merry Christmas. And it's Christmas, more Christmas. So maybe we'll put up some more Christmas decorations. I have the lights. Now, I have some Christmassy things, because there's still the lights up. Mantelpiece, what do we have? We have awards. I have this. What are they? Well, okay. I do not have an Emmy. I did not win an Oscar. I don't have an Emmy or an Oscar or Tony. I do, however, have the Young Artist Award. I want the Young Artist Award, and it's a Lifetime Achievement Award. Because when you're a child actor, if you live to be very, very old, they give you a Lifetime Achievement Award. So that's pretty cool. And the really cool, like silver, this one, that is from TV Land. I love TV Land. TV Land has award shows, and it's so much fun. It's like the best award show. Because it's not really like the Emmys or the Oscars, so there's no pressure. It's just the people go, it's the TV Land Awards, who cares? Which means everyone has way more fun at the party. It's really good. So the TV Land Awards, I went, and I went a couple times. I handed stuff out, but I won. I had to share it. I had to share it with the girl from, the one with Rerun and everything. Oh, that was a great show. Dee. Her name was, she played Dee. She was kind of like total little smart butt, like Nellie Olson. She was really awesome. We tied. It was for a character most desperately in need of a timeout. Seriously, that was my category. Character most desperately in need of a timeout. And clearly, I won. There's Sarah Udoff just said, cast a little house, no arrests, no convictions. Yay! We're very proud. So I have a Lifetime Achievement from the Young Performers, and I have a TV Land Award for character most desperately in need of a timeout. So these are the sort of things I win, and I'm very proud. So we have cool stuff up there. And I'll be here tomorrow. Munching my goldfish. I don't know what I have to eat. Delicious. The nails are getting a little shorter, because I had acrylic, but now it's shorter, real nails. But they're still, I can still paint them. I'll still make them nice. And May 9th, I go to the other part of the living room. I go all the way over there. And May 9th, I do a 30-minute half-hour version of my New York show, Confessions of a You-Know-What, or in this case, we'll say Confessions of a Prairie Terror. It's slightly naughty, not terrible. But it's going to be really cool, because I also will have question and answer. I'm collecting questions, and I will answer some questions during it, and it's going to be really silly and hysterical and funny, and I will say crazy things. And it will be on May 9th, and you can go to spincyclenyc.com, and you can go to stageit.com, look for me, Alison Arngrim, and you can get tickets to my little show. And by all means, check out my store, because there will be more bonnets. There will always be more bonnets, but I do sell out of them in bursts, and I always put that I'm sold out, because I don't want to like promise like bonnets I don't have. I'm not going to do that to you. We'll make sure I have the bonnet in stock. If I put it on there, it's in stock. So I will see you all tomorrow. Take care. Do get some rest, and wash your hands. Wash your hands. Wash your hands.